Alright, so what's up you guys? I'm out here at Jerry's house once again, and I'm going to be working on the 240. But in this video, I'm going to cover how to wire up your gauges. So I got two gauges. I got two Pro Sport gauges for water, like the water temp, coolant temp. And I also have a boost gauge I'm going to be wiring up. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And so let's get to it. Alright guys, so basically I got my gauges right here. I got the Pro Sport, and they're both Pro Sport, but I got my boost gauge in this box and I got my coolant gauge in this box. I'm probably gonna go over how to run the boost gauge first. Actually, I might just do them both at the same time. So, I mean, they're both gonna basically have a positive, they're gonna have a negative, and they're also gonna have like the accessory. So I can hook up both of them at the same time with the positive and negatives, because what I do, which might not be the smartest idea, but that's the way I've done it. So I basically hook the positives to the radio's positive and the negative to the radio's negative, because the radio always turns on with the car whenever I turn the car on and shuts off the car whenever I shut the car off. So that's how I'm going to be running my gauges, is through the radio wiring, which is basically just a hack job, and I don't recommend doing this like for your car if you're doing a professional style car. So basically you're going to want to find a power source like that connects to the battery to get the 12 volt. Actually, not even to the battery, because the battery's constant. You're going to want to find a wire to tie it into and splice into that turns on when the car turns on and shuts off when the car shuts off. So, but as for a ground, you can hook up to any ground. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So that's how I run my wires when I run my gauges and everything. I run it straight to the battery's power and the battery's ground. So I'm going to start doing that right now. So basically, when you're about to start this, you're going to want to have some wire strippers. You're going to want to have some wire cutters in case you fuck up. You want to have a soldering gun right here, and you want to have like your solder and everything like that. So that's basically all you're going to need. So I'm just going to jump right into it, I guess. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically just popping the gauge into like my little fixture right here and mounting it so that I get it out of the way. Alright, so I got one gauge on there, and I'm about to put the coolant gauge on next. And now I have both gauges already on my little fixture, and what I'm going to start doing now is just look at their wiring diagram and just wire up the wires where they need to go.
Wire up the wires where they need to go.
So for the boost gauge, I got an electric one, so I gotta put this sensor somewhere in the engine compartment and run a vacuum line / boost line to this thing for my boost gauge. So I'll put that in later. I'll just get the regular wires all set. Basically the only wires I'm using on the gauge right up here are, let's focus this in. I'm using the white wire, the red wire, the black wire, and the green wire. I'm not even touching the orange wire. But basically the ones I have wired up so far is the red wire and the white wire and the black wire. Black wire is a ground, and then the white wire for the Pro Sport basically is to make sure it lights up like the white color instead of blue. I could light it up blue or white. If I wanted it blue, I'd use the orange, but I want it white, so I hooked up the white wire and then I hooked up the red wire. Basically I just tied the white and the red together and I hooked that to the power, and then I hooked up the black to the ground. And I did that with both of these because they're both the same wiring and everything. And I have this marked for black because I'm going to use the black one, this one for the boost, and then this one for the coolant. So white and red is hooked to the power, and then black is hooked to the ground, and then the green, you have to run the green to the engine bay basically, and you're going to be running those to the sensors that are going to come back to the gauge and basically give you your information. So green, that's what I'm doing right now. I have a little hole down there that I've ran, and it's actually in the engine bay right now. So come over here. I have my wires ran down there, and then these are my green wires. I extended them, so that's what I got right now, and I'm about to wire the sensors up.
Fine, and I'll zap the fuck out of you.
Alright, you guys, so don't mind whatever Chris was just talking about, zapping the fuck out of someone, but this is the boost gauge sensor. Yeah, this is the boost gauge sensor, and basically you want to wire this up. As you see, white is going to go to the green wire of the gauge, red is the 12-volt battery, and the black is the ground. So that's how you want to wire that up, and then you want to take the vacuum line or boost line, and you want to plug that into this side right here, and that will read how much boost you're running. So I'm gonna wire this up, well, somehow, so that's what I'm about to do right now.
Oh, I could.
Alright, you guys, so I basically got the boost gauge part set up. I got it right here. That's the boost sensor that goes to the gauge. So basically I got this, the black wire right here, that's grounded, and I do have it grounded, like it's all nice and shiny metal, it's touching metal. I got the red wire that goes to power. Temporarily I have it sent to my power distributor block right down here. So it's getting power, and then the green is going to the gauge to basically give it the information on like how much boost I have. And it's plugged in good right here. But whenever I turn the car on, the gauge doesn't want to read in vacuum. It wants to read full boost for some reason. I'll show you guys right now. So I have the gauge sitting right here. That's the boost gauge. I'll start the car. Alright, so you guys see what I'm talking about? It's like in full boost right now. So I'll rev the engine. It's like reverse. It's really weird. I don't know if I have it wired up wrong or what, but I don't think it's supposed to be like that. So yeah, that's what I'm dealing with right now with the boost gauge. I'm losing daylight, and I'm about to have to leave soon, so I doubt I'm going to get the coolant gauge like wired up or anything. But basically, I am like 100% positive I have this thing wired up right. It's right down here, the wiring diagram. So that's how I have it right there, like for the sensor. Like I don't see what the big deal is. So it says the green goes to the boost sender. I have that right. White power, red goes to power, black is ground. That's all I'm using. I'm not using the orange right here. So I have all that wired up right. Everything's set, but it wants to read as if I'm in like 30 pounds of boost. And then whenever I rev the engine, it goes down. So I have no clue as to what the problem is. It might just be a defected sensor, because I've heard online that Pro Sport actually does send a lot of, I guess, bad products out. which I didn't know that until after I bought it, so I might end up calling them up and seeing if I can get a refund or something, or send them, get like an exchange or whatnot, because it's pretty annoying. So what's up, you guys? I'm back out here again working on the KA. It's been 1 week since I tried to mess with the gauges basically, and I wasn't able to finish it that Sunday. So I thought, why not try and finish it today, or somewhat finish it. Halfway through the week, I had to come out here and actually got my boost gauge, and I sent it back to Pro Sport because I thought something was wrong with it, and they tested it. So my gauge isn't here right now for the boost part, but I'm able to work on the coolant temp gauge, so that's what I'm going to do right today. So yeah, that's basically it. It's pretty nasty weather outside. This is actually the weekend that Hurricane Matthew is actually hitting the US, so yeah, it's pretty wet and rainy and everything outside. It's actually pretty wet and rainy inside the shop also. But as for today, what I have here, let's get into this. What I have here is my little coolant temp sensor, which is this silver piece, not this whole black piece. This black piece is actually basically like an adapter piece. I'm gonna have to cut my hose right here and fit this black piece in between the hose so that it's able to get some coolant on it and basically figure out the temperature. Because the stock hole right here has way smaller threads compared to this, and I'm not trying to like really tap that or anything of that sort. So I'm basically just gonna, I was wanting to flush my coolant anyway, just get all the nasty stuff out of the engine that was in it when I first started it up, and basically I'll flush it all out, and then that's gonna be the perfect opportunity to cut this. And I'll cut this and then put this on, and then I'll end up putting coolant in it because I was just running straight water. I'll just put my regular coolant in it and everything like that. But as for the gauge itself, you guys from the last video should already know how I wired it. But in case you guys weren't here when I did wire it, the inside part of the gauge, like the gauge itself, not the sensor, for both the boost and the coolant gauge, they both had the same wires. As you see right there is a green wire, orange wire, black wire, white wire, and red wire. So basically I just wired the white and the red wire together and hooked that to a 12-volt power source, which I said I used the radio, and I used a black one, that's a ground, so I put that to the signal ground for the radio also. But as for the boost gauge, I think that's my problem with the boost gauge, because Pro Sport tested out the boost gauge and everything, and they were saying that it worked perfectly fine. So I still have to figure it out myself basically, because they weren't able to help me really. So that's the only thing I can think of with the boost gauge, but that'll be a different day when I get that back from Pro Sport. But as for the coolant temp gauge, pretty sure I have that wired up right because I tested it out and it seemed to be working fine, I guess. But yeah, so that's how I had it wired up. White and red goes to power, black goes to the ground. I did not use the orange wire that came with the gauge itself. I used the green one though. The green one is a signal wire, and the green one I wired it. It went down into the floorboard. I made it go through the firewall. Came through the firewall, and then it comes down through here, all the way up, connects to the black gauge. So here's the green wire. I basically extended it. It doesn't come this long already. And then it goes to the white wire on my Pro Sport sensor. And then as for the black wire turns into a ground, which I actually thought it was a power at first until I reread the instructions. So that's why it's a red wire. I like to have my stuff color coded the right way instead of like this. But I'm using the red wire as a ground, so that's how I basically wired up my coolant gauge. I have the instructions over here, so I'll post that for you guys in the video. But that's basically how you wire it. But as of now, I'm basically just going to drain my coolant and end up cutting my my hose right there, so I can put that gauge in there and then refill my whole thing up again, and the gauge should be top shape. Alright guys, so I probably could have just changed out the coolant with the car on the ground, but when I put the coolant back in, KAs are like notorious for having like air bubbles whenever you're trying to flush the coolant system and refill it. So I've always heard that it's better to have it jacked up so that all the coolant rushes to the back, so that the radiator has the highest point. Jerry has this little thing that helps with the filling up the radiator and everything, so that's a plus. But I just like to have it jacked up anyway, just in case, because that is a major problem with the KAs. They like to overheat because of air bubbles, and definitely don't want that. Definitely because it's boosted, it's going to create more heat already. So yeah, that's why I have it jacked up. And if you're ever wondering when you kind of flush your whole system why it's leaking so slow and it's not pouring out, well, there's no air in the system, or I forgot what the correct physical term of what happens, but if you just take your radiator cap off, it will help the freaking whole system like go out or flush out. So pull that off right now, and then boom, look at it go. Also help by probably squeezing the lines, maybe, I don't know. Alright, so as that drains down there and it's already undrained up here, I'm probably going to just end up cutting it right now. So basically I just gotta be able to fit this somewhere into there. So I'm thinking maybe like right there. Luckily this silicone hose has like lines already, so I can just mark it. So basically I just need to cut this little section out right there, because I don't need it to be the full length of this. I just need it to be basically as big as just this like little centerpiece. So that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. So I'm about to do that. Now what I'm going to do is take the two clamps and slide one clamp on this side and then one clamp on this side, and then take my sensor and then slip it right up on there, just like this. And then boom, my sensor's on. Now I just gotta put the clamps on and tighten them. Actually, I'm gonna swap these clamps around. I'll have them underneath so that it looks a lot cleaner. So once you're finished tightening up the clamps, it should look like this. Hose, cut the hose, cut that little chunk out so it's separated, and then just fit this little adapter piece right up in there. That's what it looks like. Now all I gotta do is run this ground I'm gonna run it to the chassis right here, right where that little screw is, and then fill up my radiator again with the little tool that Jerry has, where I gotta find it because I don't know where it went. But fill up the radiator, and then I can start the car up and check and see how it's running. So see if my gauge actually moves up. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm just gonna probably get a socket right fast and check the tightness of the clamps right fast, just to be sure on the safe side. And then I'll fill up the radiator or put the ground on, depending on which I feel like doing first, and then that gauge should be set. So I'm probably gonna hook the ground up first, because when I put the coolant in, I'm going to let the car run so that it opens the thermostat and gets all that coolant and everything in there. And while the car is running, I could watch the gauge and see if it's actually heating up. So I'd rather do it in that order. So that's what I'm gonna end up doing. For me to do that, I just basically have a bare wire. So I need to come over here. Jerry's got a lot of little things that we could use, like end pieces basically. So so I'm basically just going to find one of these and then put it on the wire and then screw the wire down so it has a nice good ground. Alright guys, so I'm basically going to ground this wire right here, back here, where I have the sensor for the boost gauge, so I have both my grounds in the same spot also. It might be ugly, I guess, if I have this wire just like going down here like that and just hanging loose, but I'll clean it up in the future. But as long as it's not touching anything bad, then I'm not really worried about it, so I'm just going to ground it over here. Alright, so I have it grounded right there with the boost gauge ground also. So you just follow that wire, goes right there, that red wire, right to the sensor itself. The green wire is already ran, so the gauge itself is already hooked up. So now all I gotta do is just put coolant and everything inside the 240. So just take this little bolt, plug the radiator back up, and then I can start to fill up the radiator with coolant and water. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Alright you guys, so this is basically the tool that I'm going to be using to fill up the radiator. So basically you just take this little piece right here, stick it in the radiator hole, and then that like fastens down, and make sure that nothing gets out, no leaks or nothing. It has like a little rubber sealer thing on it, so put that down. Then you take this, push that down on top of this, the little plastic piece, and what you do is, what this does basically is keeps the water level above the engine. So basically the coolant and water and everything that's inside is going to get pushed down into the radiator. And then the fact that I have my car jacked up makes it even better. So that's good. That makes sure all the leaks come out of the 240. So that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to just start pouring coolant down it, get this all set up, and yeah, finish off this video. Alright guys, so I got it as full as it can go right now. So what I'm going to do is end up turning the car on and just letting it, like the water pump, just pump the water through and push as many air bubbles out as possible. I'm going to end up squeezing squeezing all the freaking hoses and everything and like that. So I'm going to try and do it as best as I can to get all the air bubbles out of the whole system and basically just fill it up to the top, make sure it has like it's fully filled up and everything. So yeah, that's what I'm about to do right now. Oh, forgot one thing. Oh, I need this negative. Whoop. Oh, there it is. It's all lit up. Fuel pump on. And let's start this thing. Alright you guys, so it's pretty loud over there. I don't even know if you guys can hear me, but I'm let the car run and I'm going to try and get all the air bubbles out, and then I'm just going to keep filling it as much as I can. And then once I do that, then I can just pull the little part off, the yellow part that helps me fill it up, pull that off and then put the radiator cap on it, and then it should be ready to go. So I'm gonna do that now. Alright, you guys, so I got the whole coolant set up and everything. I'll keep you guys updated with the boost gauge because I really want to get that figured out. So yeah, that's how you wire up your coolant, and that's how you do the wiring for like the gauges on the inside part of the car to get them to light up and everything. That's what I did. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so we are all up into the future now, and I finally got my boost gauge back. I done sent it to the manufacturer, which is Pro Sport, and I got it back and I wired it up. So here it is. That's it right there. This is the boost gauge, and it is working perfectly fine after I made one change, and that one change was the ground that goes to the gauge, not to the sender, which is in the engine bay, but the ground that goes to these two gauges right here. Basically I chassis grounded it. I didn't do a signal ground that went to the ground of the radio. So I chassis grounded these, and the white and red wire from these two gauges, the gauges, not the senders, went to the red wire of the which is the switch 12 volt. So that's how I wired it up, and they both work perfectly fine. So this is what they look like when they turn on, as you see. The boost gauge zeroes out, which it wasn't at first. It wasn't zero out. It'd be either at -10 or it'd be in full boost. And then the coolant temp, it reads fine too. But that's what all was freaking stopping me from having the gauges running properly, was just that ground. So I chassis grounded it and it worked perfectly fine. And now I got my gauges all wired up. I would start the car and show you guys the boost gauge and like operation and everything, and also the coolant, but I'm in the middle of the oil pan project right now, so I don't have the oil pan on right now. So basically that's why I won't start the car. But yeah, that's how you wire up your gauges. I'm not sure if this video actually helped, but yeah, that's what I went through with my gauges. So yeah, please do leave a like and subscribe, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.